Okay, shalom to everyone. Today is I think the 17th of December. And tell me, Lori, are we going to tape a week from today, which is Christmas Eve?
That's up to you.
Oh, up to me, the answer is yes. But, I don't want to offend anyone if people are out there enjoying Christmas.
There just may not be very many people, but we can sure do it.
Yeah, okay, good. No, we'll do it. We'll do it. Um, Okay, so I have a lot to say, obviously, in light of the overall situation. Um, being alive at this time is very special. We've been doing these Zooms now, Lori, I think for 2 years, and or rather, yes, we've been doing this 2 years.
We started after the war broke out.
So a year and 4 months, let's say, or 3 months. And the All I can say is that I came to Israel. I made Aliyah in the summer of 1968. And what I can remember is this was before I was in the army. I was in the university, and we were having something called the War of Attrition with Syria and with Egypt. And there is no way that I can emphasize enough how dangerous we saw Egypt and Syria. And we made peace with Egypt, which is also, I mean, I was here in Israel. I witnessed it. I felt it. I went to Egypt after the peace process started. So it was a revolution for me. Rachel was with me, and we went to the house where she grew up. And then in what year was it? 1994, Prime Minister Rabin, rest in peace, brokered a peace deal with Jordan, which was a great thing. And there were rumors that Israel was going to make peace with Syria. Rabin was working on it, and nothing happened. But part of the plan was that Israel had to give up the Golan Heights. Uh, in 2006, we had a prime minister, Ehud Olmert. Also in 2000, we had a prime minister, Ehud Barak, and these guys were working seriously on returning the Golan Heights to Syria. Our next door neighbor, Geula Cohen, helped to pass the bill that Golan Heights is Israel with Israeli sovereignty, and she was our next door neighbor. And I see Aaron is online, but Geula Cohen was Yemenite, rest in peace. And she would come over and exchange recipes and dishes with my wife. My wife would make Egyptian food, and Geula Cohen would make Yemenite food, very spicy. We all loved it very much. We loved Geula Cohen very much. But every time I think of Geula Cohen, I think of the Golan Heights. And Barak offered the Golan Heights. Barak offered half of Jerusalem. We offered, as they say in American slang, we offered the whole 9 yards to the Syrians. We offered the whole 9 yards to Arafat, the Palestinian Authority, and our bottom line was, just make peace with us. And nothing worked. None of these offers that we made worked. And in 1974, former Secretary of State Henry Kissinger brokered a disengagement agreement with Syria, where Israel would withdraw from territories that we took in Syria during the 73 war, October 73 war. Under great pressure, Israel was forced to withdraw to the lines that we had until 2 weeks ago. But Syria was really a big problem. And so all I can say is living in Israel has been miraculous for me, for my family. Also, I met my wife because the Egyptian government had such a stupid leader like Gamal Abdel Nasser that he kicked out the last Jews from Egypt. So, because of the stupidity of Gamal Abdel Nasser, I got my wife. I got my children. We went to Egypt after the peace agreement. And, I'm not what you call a peacenik, but we see things happening like ending the state of war with Egypt, ending the state of war with Jordan in 1994, excuse me. So much happening in the last 70 years. But nobody saw peace with Syria. Syria was absolutely the most adamant enemy of Israel these days. And I don't want to say that everything was organized by Netanyahu, because of course the Iranians say that Netanyahu is responsible for the collapse of the Bashar al-Assad government in Syria. But one thing is known, that thanks to the stupidity of Gaza leader Sinwar, the great enemy of October 7th, Israel has been fighting to this day, a year and 3 months with Gaza. We still have 100 of our people, some alive, some dead, hostages in Gaza. And 2 months ago, we started attacking Hezbollah, which is another group entirely, also backed by Iran. After that came the crazy beeper attacks and walkie-talkie attacks against the Shiite leadership in Lebanon, in Syria, in Iran. And we had 2 rocket attacks on Israel from Iran, to which we didn't reply because President Biden said no. We had to bomb Yemen twice because of the constant missiles. I don't know if you know the news in the States, but yesterday the U.S. military, CENTCOM, General Kurilla, attacked Yemen. So the things that have developed and are still developing, and the Israeli government and the Israeli people are in the middle of all this, but Damascus fell and Syria fell. I have to mention something. Megan, you are there, yes? You hear me, Megan?
Yes, sir.
Were you in the car with us when we drove up to the Syrian hospital?
Yes, sir, I believe so, because I've been to Syria now twice.
So, you did something historic. You did something record-breaking. And I drove up with you guys, or I drove back from there with you guys, and we drove right up to the border fence, and the Israeli army. I said to them, "Oh, I'm going into Syria. Also have an American passport." And the young lady officer looked at me like she was going to kill me. He said, "You are Israeli. Don't fool around with this. You can't go into Syria." But you went in.
Yes, sir.
And Jody Anderson went in, and Pastor Keith went in, and I think we were coming back. Yeah, we were coming back from there, and it was just such an emotional thing that the Israelis set up a hospital in Syria, right on the border, and so every time I drive up to the Golan Heights, which is every so often, I think of you guys very much, that you played a role in history. You played a role in Israel's history. There were Muslims who are Sunnis, who were the enemies of the Shiite Bashar al-Assad government. And I remember you guys were telling me about people with broken arms and broken legs, and they came across the border, and the Israeli hospital took care of them. Some were referred to a hospital in Nahariya. And it's very, very interesting to see the relationships that develop.
There were also many infants and newborn babies that we were helping kind of um, navigate and get them medical care as well. Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. Anything you might want to add, interrupt me anytime and tell everybody on the Zoom what happened. Um, I'm going to say something really silly. Tomorrow, God willing, my wife and I are driving up to Majd al-Shams. And what has happened is right across that disengagement line are 6 Druze villages with 26,000 residents. And they're begging, demanding that Israel adopt them and change the border so that the Druze villages will be part of Israel. And they said, we will be soldiers. We were in the Syrian army. Now we will be in the Israeli army. We, under no circumstances, want to be under Islamic Jihad type Sunni leadership. So I was thinking to myself, Rachel always complains, and rightly so. I never take her anywhere. So I said, you know what? Tomorrow we're going up to Majd al-Shams. It's a 3-hour drive each way. And, I think I've mentioned many times I'm a stamp collector and a coin collector. So I said, we go up there to look for a money changer. And the money is worthless. The Syrian money is worthless. But I want to have some in my collection. I have no Syrian money. And this is an opportunity because the Jews are always going in and out of Syria. And it's quasi legal. So tomorrow we're going up to Syria. We're going up to Majd al-Shams. We're not going into Syria. We're just going up to the Majd al-Shams, have a nice day there. I don't know. I'm extremely excited. This is history. Living in Israel, the last 55 years is history. And now there's another area. I'm sure I spoke about this in past Zooms. If you go east from the Golan Heights, there is an area called Suwaida. Suwaida is a Druze city, and it's based pretty much on the mountain of the Druze, Jebel Druze. And there are almost 500,000 Druze living there. And they face certain annihilation from the Sunni terrorists if Israel doesn't go in and protect them. And actually what happened was that these Druze, they were all in the Syrian army. And all of a sudden, there is a tectonic change. The Druze of the Golan and Suwaida, they want to join Israel. They want to be Israeli citizens. And I'm so excited. I mean, everybody says, the bad people in the media say that Israel is guilty of genocide. And yet you have these Druze, they want to be part of a genocide country because they know that Israel's not a genocide country. So it's very exciting to see people wanting to join us. And actually halfway to Suwaida is a Sunni Muslim Bedouin city called Daraa. And these people are Bedouin, they're Sunni Muslims. And these are the ones I think who are going to the hospital where you were. And Israel, nobody talks about this in the media here, but I think it's fairly obvious that we are coordinating with King Abdullah of Jordan, who's Sunni. King Abdullah of Jordan has a problem with the fanatic ISIS people who have taken over, with Turkish help, taken over much of Syria. So Israel is working to back King Abdullah, because if we don't back him, he may fall. If he falls, we have a very, very long border with Jordan. So this city of Daraa might be somehow worked into the kingdom of Jordan. There is no more Syria. So we have to forget about Syria. There is no more Syria. The one thing they do say a lot in our media is that there is no more Syria. Syria will probably be broken up into different territories. As we all know, those of us who know the history, the Druze, the Kurds, the Shiites, the Alawites, the Sunnis, there is no such thing as a Syrian nation. What you have is different ethnic groups. And the Turks have actually laid claim to Aleppo in the north and Idlib and they want to make it part of Turkish Empire. So Turkey has invaded from the north. Everyone who's not Sunni, and even those who are Sunni but not fanatic Sunni, feel very, very threatened by these terrorists, by these Sunni terrorists. So I have a feeling we will be seeing the Kurds forming a new state. It'll be the first time there's a Kurdish state in the Middle East. There are 40 million Kurds in Syria, Turkey, Iraq, and Iran. The Kurds and the Israelis have always been allies. The Druze were not always allies, the Druze of Syria. The Druze of Israel, yes. But what's happening now is all the Druze have united to be under the rule of Israel, because the Druze understand that they have to go with the strong one. Israel is the strong one. And if they don't go with Israel, they will be annihilated by the the ISIS terrorists. So this is a self-preservation of the Druze. And I think Israel would welcome this very much, even though off the record, because Israel would be attacked then for conquering new territory. We're not conquering any new territory. There are people who just want to stay alive, and that's the Druze. And I wanted to remind all of you, those of you who remember the history, when ISIS, during the civil war in Syria, the Druze were surrounded by enemies, and their idea was to kill every last Druze on the mountain of Suwaida, the mountain of the Druze. And the leadership of the Druze came to Netanyahu, this is like 10 years ago, and said, either Israel invades or let us as Druze volunteer to go to our areas, to our villages, to protect our people. And so obviously Israel was not in a situation during the Arab Spring to invade the south of Syria. What did Netanyahu do? Netanyahu, to his credit, went to Moscow, to Russia. And what did we see? We saw the Russian army coming into Syria. And basically, I know some of you might not like to hear what I'm going to say, but Russia was the good guy. Russia came in to protect the Druze, to protect the Christians. Don't forget, you've got like 1 million to, I don't know how many Christians in Syria. Protect the Alawites. I'm going to get back to the Alawites in a moment. The so-called bad guys. And I've spoken about this many times. But the Russians helped to stabilize, at least for 10 years, the Bashar al-Assad regime. The only problem is the Bashar al-Assad regime went downhill, and their prisons were notorious for the torture and the things they did to prisoners. Israel kind of just stayed out of it because it was an internal matter for Syria. But this, how shall I say, this failure of Bashar al-Assad and the fleeing of Bashar al-Assad from Syria brought about a situation where there was no one in charge, and it was literally easy. Almost no shots were fired by ISIS people, by the Julani people against any of the Syrian people. And until now, Julani is taking a very, very low profile approach to Israel. And Julani is saying, oh, we don't want any more war. Even with Israel, we don't want any more war. So what happened in Syria the last 2 weeks is not a once in a lifetime situation. What happened now in Syria is a once in a millennium situation. The complete overthrow of a regime and turning Syria into a multi-ethnic breakdown state. Some people were saying maybe like Switzerland, Syria should have cantons. The problem is that really nobody likes anybody in Syria. The Druze, for their self-survival, were loyal to the regime of the Shiites. You have to remember the agreement in Syria, or the alliance in Syria, was the Shiites about 10%, the Druze about 10%, the Christians about 10%, and about 20% of the population which supported Bashar al-Assad. They were Sunnis, but they were part of what they called then the Ba'ath Party. Ba'ath was also in Iraq. Interestingly, in Iraq, I'm sorry to confuse all of you, but the minorities came together to fight the majority, which was Sunni. And what we see happening in Syria is that Bashar al-Assad killed 500,000 Sunnis. Bashar al-Assad expelled, forced 5 million, talking about genocide, talking about ethnic cleansing. The Sunnis fled to Turkey and then to all of Europe, to the US. I'll never forget in 2013, I bought my Toyota van in Phoenix, Arizona, at the Camelback Phoenix showroom there. They had 13 Sunni Syrian expelled people working as agents there. And I talked to them. They were not hostile to me, even though I was Jewish and Israeli. But they said what's happening in Syria is horrible. And yet almost the world doesn't say anything. Who's the guilty one always? Israel. Israel had nothing to do. This is an internal war between Syria of the Shiites and Syria of the Sunnis and the Turks and others. And all of a sudden we see the Russians defeated, and the Russians flee after 10 years. The Russians did a very important job to protect the Shiites and the Druze and the Kurds and everything. So now what we see happening is the Turks, okay, now this is where we have to watch very carefully now. The Turks have been preparing this terrorist army to take over Syria. And now the Turks are turning eastward towards, there's a town called Kobani, and it is a Kurdish town. I'm sorry if you get confused with little names because there's so much information. And, you know, Rachel gave up, you know, she can't watch this stuff. It's so crazy. So I have to watch everything in order to do these, Zooms with you guys. There are pitched battles now between the Turkish army and the Kurds. And you have to remember, the Kurds are about 20% of Turkey, in the southeast of Turkey. The Kurds are in northeast, half of Syria is Kurdish, northeast Syria. Their border begins, you know where? On the Euphrates River. And the Kurds would be simply very delighted if the Israelis brought their army all the way up to the Euphrates River. So I know many of you who love God and love the Bible, you think that, hey, you know, it's destiny of Israel that we reach the Euphrates. And I say, yes. I say, this is something we did not plan. Nobody 2-3 weeks ago, except for maybe Netanyahu and the military commanders of the Israeli army who saw all of this happening, said by weakening Hezbollah, this strengthened the Turks, this strengthened the Sunnis. This is an epic moment. The Turks are now preparing, little by little, they're going to prepare to take over Syria as much as they can. So you have a Turkish-controlled area of Syria. The Druze in the south and some of the Sunnis who were at the hospital on the border between Syria and Israel, Kurds, other minorities. We don't hear anything about the Christians in Damascus. They're very, very fearful because ISIS says they won't do anything, but we know that's a lie. We know that the bottom line is to wipe out Jews on Saturday, Christians on Sunday. there really aren't any Jews in Syria. So the threat is totally against the Christians living in Damascus and other areas there. By far, this is not over. The whole picture is in flux. Everything is fluid, everything is changing. But we know one thing, the Druze have made a very clear decision, and it's the first time that the Druze of Lebanon, the Druze of Syria, the Druze of Israel are united and want to be under the Israeli flag. I don't know, I get very emotional about this. And I don't know, I'm going to go up with my wife tomorrow to Majd Shams. We're going to have coffee. I don't know what we're going to have up there. I want to see if we can make friends and have somebody there. There are some people on TV who live in the north. I don't know if they live in Majd Shams, but this is a whole new door opening for Israel and for the Jewish people. Eventually for the Christians also. So I'm very excited about that. And we also have to watch very carefully what the ISIS Sunni Muslims are going to try to do from Turkey, from Idlib, from Hama, from Homs, all the way to Damascus, and to see what they want to try to do against Israel. Meanwhile, the Israeli military is taking out weapons sites in Syria. The weapons that the Bashar al-Assad government had, wipe out these weapons so that the terrorists do not get their hands on these weapons. Again, we see it on TV. I don't know anything about what the military is doing. These are things they show a few snippets on the TV. But I will say that the day is going to come, in my opinion, and this is not prophecy. This is what the Kurds are telling us. They want a state. The Kurds are 40 million. They're the biggest nation, biggest ethnic group without a state. Everyone talks about Palestinian state. Palestinians are 5, 6, 7 million. But the Kurds are 40 million divided up between Turkey, Syria, Iraq, and Iran. So Iraq is going to get divided up also. I don't know what's going to happen with Iran, but the northernmost part of Iran is settled by Kurds, and just to the north of them, Azeris. Azeris are like the people of Azerbaijan, right across the border. From an Israeli perspective, you know, Israel is not talking about breaking up Iran because this would ruin our relationship with the Persians. The Persians are 50% of Iran. So we're just watching to see what happens with all these countries, because these borders were artificial borders set up by the British and French foreign ministries after World War I. You know, I'm a history freak. I love history. I love watching all of these developments. And it has been, I think it's fair to say, it has been a blessing that God has brought me to this earth at this time to see all of these things. I mean, people who are not interested in history, it doesn't interest them, but it's super interesting for me. And I think we're going to see massive border line changes in Syria, in Iraq, in Iran, in Turkey. I will add also another thing. The southwestern part of Turkey, if you look at your maps of Turkey, there's an area there in Turkey called Iskenderun, but it's an Arabic section. These people are Shiites. There are, I think, 20% of the population of Turkey is Alawite Shiite, and they are southwest Turkey. And the Turks, who are Sunnis, hate the Shiites. And the Shiites are very, very persecuted in southwest Turkey. The Kurds are persecuted in southeast Turkey. I don't know if Turkey is the Armageddon. I personally believe that this is the enemy of the North that might come down to attack Israel. But the route would probably be through Syria with the ISIS Sunni Muslims. So I don't know. It's like you see the cake rising in the oven, but you don't know exactly how the cake is going to turn out. But it's in the oven. It's in the cooking process. It will be very interesting to see what develops in Syria in the coming days and weeks and months. There are people on Channel 14 who say we will be years in these areas that we've taken control of in Syria. And so I don't know. I'm not saying this. Did somebody want to say something?
Yeah.
Okay. If you have nothing to ask or something, please mute yourself because I think people are making remarks and it's on the anyway. So this is a very, very difficult process. America is the exact opposite. America has so many ethnic groups, so many states. Everything is interconnected, and there is no such thing, except maybe for Texas breaking away from the United States, which I think is interesting, very, very funny. But the exact opposite here in the Middle East. You have all these ethnic groups. The border lines of the different areas are completely artificial. So we have to watch all these things very carefully. And all I can say is praise God. It's good to be alive at this time. Everything that we have seen in the last year and 4 months with Gaza, with Hezbollah, with Syria, with Iran, with Yemen, and again, CENTCOM attacked in Yemen yesterday. All these things are prophecy being fulfilled. And it's a great thing to be alive and to be witnesses to these things happening. I have a lot more to say, but I think we can do some questions and answers, and more information will come out. Any questions?
Avi, what kind of resistance is expected by the quote unquote new government, the rebels in Syria, against, for example, the Druze being annexed or just breaking up into different territories?
Well, you have to remember that you are talking about they are proxies. The ISIS group there of Al-Julani, they are proxies of the Turks. And if you want to ask that kind of a question, you have to ask the Turks, because we don't know what the Turks are planning. I mean, we kind of do know, but at this stage, Israel is, waiting to see the developments. The ISIS type groups there are very clear that they don't like anybody who's not fanatic Sunni. So we have to watch and we have to protect the Christians in Syria, protect the Alawite Shiites, and the Druze and the Kurds. All these groups now, basically, that coalition that fought Bashar al-Assad, fought for Bashar al-Assad, that group has now failed, and all of a sudden you have this new group backed by the Turks. And the Turks have their own imperialistic, colonialistic plans for the takeover of Syria and making it part of the Turkish Empire, the new Turkish empire that is developing. So we are watching that very carefully.
Avi, didn't HTS say their ambition as a group was to liberate Jerusalem? And so that would obviously put Israel squarely in the crosshairs. And also, did they make some comment about Mecca as well?
Yes.
Yeah.
You are very right. I want to say something and have to be very careful that no Muslim will be offended by what I'm going to say. But I think the Muslims know that what I'm saying is the truth. And that is that the ISIS people backed by Turkey look at Mecca, look at the Kaaba, the holy site of Islam. They look at this as a pagan site, which is actually anti-Islamic. The black stone is pagan. It has pagan origins. It was adopted by Muhammad, the so-called Prophet of Islam. But Mecca is not really anything holy for Muslims. It is a pagan site. I have to tell you, again, without offending Christians, but there are places in Latin America where the Spanish conquistadores came into Latin America and defeated the Indians, the Native Americans. Certain sites, which had nothing to do with Christianity, were adopted by the Catholic Church as part of Christianity. I think Guadalupe is one of them. So Jerusalem is kind of like, by the way, for these terrorists. And Mecca is probably the end result of what these ISIS terrorists want, which is a caliphate, and for Islamic control, Turkish control over the Middle East again. So this is, I would probably say, the next challenge. I wanted to say one more thing also, that the war in Syria for the last 10, 15 years was a war against the Sunnis, and the Christians became allies of the Shiites. So even though there's an animosity between the Christians and the Shiites, you look at Lebanon, for example, and a lot of the Christians in Lebanon became pro-Shiite. In other words, not Shiites, but they saw there were many, many forces. The Christians were divided into two groups. There were those who were ready to fight Syria and fight for the independence of a Christian Lebanon. And there were other Christians who said, no, we're going to be part of this Lebanon and Syria that has Shiites in it. And so now the Christians in Lebanon have to think for themselves, are we betting on a losing horse? And so many, many Christians now are saying, they're not saying anything to Israel. Israel's still in flux. The world is against Israel and what's happening in Lebanon. Lebanon was a completely failed country. The economy was completely broke. And Israel, I don't know if secretly Israel had talks with anyone, but the key to getting Lebanon alive and back on its feet economically is for the Christians to take over and do their job and not be slaves of the Shiites. So now with the Turks breathing down their necks just across Mount Hermon to the north of the Israeli area, I think that the Shiites are not an asset, but a liability for the Christians. So the same problem translates over to Syria. So you have these coalitions, which are now very, very fluid, and but the Druze very clearly have broken away from the Shiite coalition, and the Druze are now with Israel. You have to remember the churches of the Christians in Damascus are very, very anti-Israel. And Senator Cruz, what's Cruz's first name?
Ted.
Ted
Cruz. Ted Cruz went to a Syrian conference, I think in Washington, D.C., and he got up, he got booed, he got kicked out. He said, you Christians have to realize that Israel is your best friend. And he was forcibly expelled from this conference. There's a very virulent hatred against Israel and the Jewish people by the Syrian Christians. So these Christians in Syria have to go through a complete change in their thinking. Same applies to the Christians in Lebanon. The Christians in Lebanon would have their military formations, and they would stand up like Nazi Germany, raise their right hand and say, Heil Hitler. This is something we all knew, that the Christians in Lebanon were anti-Israel. And, I have to tell you, that I'm working to get Christians representation in the Knesset. My wife said to me, listen, the Christians of the Middle East are not the Christians of Texas. And, told me that Joni Anderson said to me, that the Christians in the Middle East are not the white Anglo-Saxon Protestant Christians of the United States, the Protestants who love the Jewish people. So this is another brand, an ancient brand, 2,000-year-old brand of Christians who hate the Jews. So again, we have to see, will these Christians change their way of thinking to embrace the Jews and the Israelis? And we see this happening. This happened now with the Druze. The Druze are now with the Jewish people. The Christians, we still don't know where they stand. I haven't heard one thing yet in the news about Christians standing with Israel.
Can I ask you another question, Avi?
Yes, dear.
So the Druze are 40 million.
How many? The
Did you
Kurds.
say? How many did you say?
The Kurds are 40 million.
The Kurds.
The
Right.
Druze in Syria are about 1 million.
1 million. Sorry. So
That's okay.
the Kurds, are they Sunni or who? What do they follow?
Well, the Kurds are, some of them are Shiites, some of them are Druze, but the Kurds are an ethnic group,
Right.
and they are just not recognized by the Iranians, by the Iraqis, by the Syrians, by the Turks. They're just kind of like out there with no government, with no state. But I will say one thing, the Kurds are very courageous fighters. And Israel, if you have to say what kind of a relationship the Jewish people have had with the Kurds, it's been primarily very positive.
So that would make them potentially enemies with Turkey if Turkey wanted to get a. They are, but
they are.
Yeah. So they're in the crosshairs as well, the Druze and the Kurds of Syria.
Very much. And the Turkish government actually is preparing an offensive. This is a very strange thing I'm going to say. They're preparing an offensive to destroy the Kurds in Turkey, but they're also preparing for some kind of an electoral reform process that the Kurds will support Erdogan, support the Turkish government. So you're talking about so much bad blood between the Turks and the Kurds. So my personal opinion is that the Kurds are going to say to Israel, enough is enough. Let's get this Kurdish state on the road. If they break up Syria, the first element of the Kurdish state will be in northeast Kurdish Syria. So we have to watch that too. Israel is trying to stay away from getting involved in these things. These are things like the Druze leadership said, we are with the Jews. We are with Israel. All the Kurds are uniting under the Israeli flag. We have not yet seen that with the Kurds. I think the Kurds maybe are afraid that Israel will get cold feet, that Israel might not want to go to war with Turkey. That's also a possibility. So we have to watch that, see how things develop.
Avi, I would like your opinion on whether Israel will accept this Druze suzerainty or whatever we want to call it. And also, the main thing we keep hearing here, although slightly less muted, is that the next great theater of war will be in Judea, Samaria. Your thoughts? Well,
things are indeed heating up very much in the Judea and Samaria area. I will say that the whole purpose of the October 7th massacre that started the war with Israel was that Yahya Sinwar was hoping that Lebanon would attack Israel, which it did, that Syria would attack Israel, that the Judean Samaria Palestinians would rise up in revolt. And I think that the Judean Samaria Arabs saw the slaughter of the Gaza Arabs, and they got cold feet. They saw Israel winning against Hezbollah in Lebanon, and they got cold feet. They saw Syria collapsing. Iran I think there is no doubt that Iran is about to be taken out. The Iranian economy, the nuclear program, what you call the Palestinian West Bank Arabs, Judea Samaria Arabs, I think that they are planning to do something, but until now, every time they raise their heads up, they get shot. I mean, they get taken down by the Israeli military. This is not an easy situation. And I'll tell you, I live in Judea and Samaria. My sons live in Judea and Samaria, and we all have guns. We all are ready for some kind of terrorism, some kind of insurrection by the Arabs. But it's going to be very tragic for them, even more than for us, because we are very organized and we have the capability to deal with the Judea and Samaria terrorists as we did with Gaza and Lebanon and Syria and Iran. Again, it's a miracle from God that we are living in a time that Israel is able almost single-handedly to defend itself and destroy these terrorist organizations.
And your thoughts on whether Israel will allow the Druze, the Syrian Druze, to be a part of Israel? What would that opinion be?
Absolutely, yes. You have to remember another thing. Our neighbors to the east, the Jordanians, 70% Palestinian. They're very much against Israel. But King Abdullah is literally over a barrel with Israel. I don't know if you know this or not, but when I moved to Israel 55 years ago, I would read in the Jerusalem Post that Jordan had water in their faucets for 1 day for every week. In other words, 6 days a week, there was no water. And when Israel made peace under Rabin with Jordan, and also don't forget the desalination plants that Israel set up in the Mediterranean, we are now in a situation where we provide Jordan with all its water. There's no shortage of water in Jordan. Even 1 million Syrian refugees that fled to Jordan were provided with water by the Israelis. And the Jordanians are very embarrassed about it. They don't want to say that Israel is an ally, that Israel is their friend. Israel has many, many programs of alliance with Jordan. Until now, at least, King Hussein is not popular in the sense of his being an ally of Israel, but King Abdullah has been very strong. His military has been very strong. And to answer your question about the Druze, the idea is a buffer zone north of Jordan in what is originally Syria, formerly Syria. And basically, the Druze would be part of Israel, and they would be part of the defensive alliance to protect Jordan from the ISIS terrorists who want to come in and take over. The ISIS terrorists want to take over Jordan. They want to take over Saudi Arabia. They want to destroy Mecca. So what we're looking at, whether the Jordanians are happy or not about it, is a growing, strong alliance with Israel. And we have defended Jordan many times. Jordan was twice invaded by different troops coming to take over Jordan. And the Israeli military saved the kings, King Hussein and King Abdullah. So I think for their own sakes, the Jordanians understand how important their alliance is with Israel. And the Druze would be part of it, because if they fought in the Israeli army as part of the Israeli army, Israeli people, and the Druze are part of the Israeli people, this would help strengthen King Abdullah.
I mean, what about the with Hezbollah, the war with Hezbollah, like what percentage is Hezbollah done now in Lebanon?
Well, Hezbollah is lying very low. Hezbollah is completely alone. The Sunnis of Lebanon hate them. The Christians do not like them. I don't know if you know this or not, but a lot of the missiles that were fired at Israel by Hezbollah were fired from positions that were dug into the mountains right under Christian villages in the south of Lebanon. I mean, the Christians had no choice. So it's going to be interesting to see how Hezbollah is dealt with. But at this point, pretty much Hezbollah is keeping the ceasefire. Israel is keeping the ceasefire. The Sunnis of Lebanon are very happy because the Sunnis hate the Shiites. There are now, it was on the news yesterday, a very, very well-known Shiite commentator said that the Shiites should just drop everything and make peace with Israel. They lost the war. So I'm praying for this guy because he changed his mind. He said, destroy Israel. And now he's saying, no, let's have peace with Israel. So it'll be interesting to see where this all goes. And again, also the Christian militias. Some are pro-Syrian and some are nationalist Lebanese Christians. The whole idea of the Christians was, with the help of the French, to create a Christian proxy country speaking Arabic. And like I said before, the Phalangists were pro-Nazi, and they were not good allies to Israel. So we're watching these things. We have experience. We don't want to get burned by false agreements with the Christians or with the Sunnis or with Hezbollah. We will see how things develop. But Lebanon cannot develop. Its economy cannot develop. Lebanon was the Paris of the Middle East. It has all the potential. It's just the anti-Semitic ideologies destroyed Lebanon. You can say God's hand.
Annette, can you hear me?
Yes, I hear you, dear.
700 Club, every day they bring in something about Israel. They're really for Israel. And it was such an interesting thing yesterday. They showed that the women in the Air Force of Israel, how they helped to target the missile production facilities in Iran and take them out. I thought that was so interesting.
Well, I think Israel is a prime example of how women play a very, very major role in the Israeli military, the Israeli government, and the Israeli intelligence. And, speaking for myself, I married a woman, God gave me my wife, Rachel, who, we're both 75, but she is still a genius. And she listens to all their broadcasts. She understands everything they're doing. And all I can say is, had God not given me Rachel as my wife, I would probably not have written 7 books and not been as, in my opinion, as successful as I have been until now with the information that Rachel has been teaching me every morning and every night. Rachel said, we watch the news, and I have two news sources. I watch the news on the TV, and Rachel is commenting on the news on the TV. And so we have women who, from many different backgrounds, who are geniuses and understand. We take advantage of our entire population, but in the Islamic world, women are nothing.
Yeah.
And I think it's one of the reasons why they lose.
Yes, right. Thank you.
Thank you, sweetie.
Uh,
Aaron, do you want to talk? Do you want to say something? I see my son is the silent big brother behind the scenes here, so I'm giving him a chance to talk, but maybe he's just watching what I'm saying to smack me up a little bit if I make trouble. But I will say, God willing, that tomorrow we're up in the Golan Heights. We're up in Majlis Shams, and I hope to be able to report back to you guys a week from today as to how our little tour of the North went. We might even find some Druze who might want to join the Bible Bloc Party. We'll have to see, which is unusual because the Bible Bloc Party is a Judeo-Christian party. But if the Druze are mentioned in the Holy Bible, the Holy Torah, you might find some Druze who might say, we want to be with the Jews and the Christians, as what is happening now militarily.
Avi, is Netanyahu in Egypt right now? Do you know?
Is Netanyahu in Egypt?
Yeah, I just saw on Amir Safati, he's saying that Israel didn't know, he went in a plane, nobody knew where he'd gone, maybe to Crete, and then he came on and reported he's in discussions in Cairo regarding Hamas and Gaza.
Well, I will say something, which is just, as they say in American English, it's guesstimation. I'm guessing. Netanyahu was supposed to be in court today, and he told the judges, I'm sorry, we're going to have to postpone the court. He's talking in court about how many bottles of whiskey he got, or, I mean, I don't know. I'm just, stupid things which have, in light of the war that's going on, and Netanyahu's being pestered by the courts, and but the judges said take the day off. So, there's so much secretly going on behind the scenes. Amir Tsarfati's fantastic, so maybe I would say not only maybe probably he knows more than I know about that.
Thank you.
People always call me. The whole day could be completely quiet. I just do a Zoom, people start calling me. So it's okay. Mickey, I'm in the middle of a Zoom broadcast. Call me in about 20 minutes. Bye, Mickey. I thought I hung up the phone. It turns out I just accepted the call. Mickey Barneder is my number 3 candidate in the Bible Bloc Party, a good Jewish boy with working with me and with Christians. I don't know, maybe we'll find the Druze who will join the party too. Don't forget that they're descended from Jethro. And the Torah never says one bad thing about Jethro. And the reason that the Druze were so persecuted by the Muslims, and even to this day, is because the Muslims say that Muhammad is the greatest and latest of the prophets. And when the Druze came out and said, no, that's not true, Jethro was the greatest and latest of the prophets, anyone who doesn't say that Muhammad is the greatest and latest of the prophets, they get persecuted and killed. So the Druze, we Jewish people understand the importance of Jethro in our Bible, and God says wonderful things about him. So, I really would like to meet the Druze and see if they can come aboard and broaden our alliance. We have our differences with the Druze, but, in every family there are differences.
Do the Jews say anything about Moses?
Moses was married to the daughter of Jethro.
Right, I remember that. I remember that.
And an interesting thing is we don't really know very much about the sons of Moses, but he lived with Jethro 40 years, according to the Bible. And one of the things, I have to tell you a funny story. I once met a Druze working for Channel 24. And I said to him, Moses was almost Pharaoh. I mean, he was Prince of Egypt. And when he killed the taskmaster and had to flee from Egypt, uh, he knew where he was going. He went straight to Jethro. I mean, he knew who was the boss in Mecca and Medina. It was Jethro. And, nobody in Judaism, everyone says, oh, he was just stumbling and bumbling in the desert. No, Moses knew exactly what was going on the other side of the pond, on the other side of the Red Sea. And he went to Jethro and he married the daughter, so like that's his second wife. His first wife, for those of you who have the books of Josephus, the first wife of Moses was a black woman. And I don't know if you saw the movie The Ten Commandments, but there was something very factual that is completely overlooked. There was a triumphal parade of Moses, who was general in Pharaoh's army, coming back to the Egyptian land, and he had defeated an African army, and as part of the strategy, he married the daughter of an African king. So his first wife was black. And if you know, I don't want to say black because I don't know what the colors were 3,500 years ago, but the first wife was African, and she was descended from Ham. The daughter of Jethro, as Moses, they were descended from Abraham. Jethro was one of the descendants of Midian. I mean, most people don't pay attention to any of these genealogies, but basically, Jethro was a cousin of Moses, 4 to 5 generations removed. So I would say, well, yes, we are close to the Druze. Now, the Muslims who say that they are descended from Ishmael, they're also brothers. The question is, the Abraham Accords, can we do anything with the Abraham Accords? Can we develop new relations? Some of the people in Syria today are saying that Syria has to make peace with Israel, Lebanon has to make peace with Israel as part of the Lebanon Accords, but a part of the Abraham Accords. So it'll be very interesting to see where all of this goes. Okay, I see Angela has written to me that Netanyahu from Amir Tsarfati is going to Cairo to meet. Listen, there's stuff going on. I don't know what's going on. I don't go to Cairo. You want me? Get on the Zoom every Tuesday.
I hope he is signing the deal for the hostages, Avi. You know,
Again?
I hope he is signing a deal for the hostages release.
Could be something is happening.
Yeah.
I mean, I sure hope we get our hostages back.
Yeah. Amen.
Megan, you said something, but I didn't have a chance to read it.
Yes, sir. I was just wondering, do you have a good email to reach you at? I don't have an email for you. Like I think I used to, but I cannot find it.
It's the same email.
It
Same
is? Okay.
over 20 something years. Vic Mord, VIC
Yes, sir.
MORD 2001 at yahoo.com.
Thank you, sir.
I always say, write to me, I'll write you back. I don't know when, but usually it's pretty fast.
You said 2001?
Yes, Vic
Okay.
Mord, half of Victor, half of Mordecai, 2001 at
Gotcha.
yahoo.com.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
Okay, well, I think we've had an action-packed meeting, and hopefully I will say Merry Christmas to those who observe Christmas, but it'll be a day before Christmas, so I'll probably have to say it again next week.
How about Happy Hanukkah?
Yes, happy Hanukkah, Javi. It was so good seeing you.
Happy Hanukkah also. Don't forget Hanukkah is the Festival of Light.
The
Festival of Light.
celebration of light. Yes,
And
sir.
so there is some connection going back to those times.
I have my menorah out.
Okay, Lori.